I'm here with Anna Chu, who is the Policy Director for the War Room at the Center for American Progress Action Fund. And you've been collecting stories and information about the impact of the government shutdown. And tell me, first of all, how would you characterize the impact of the shutdown on ordinary people based on all of the research that you've done?
Highly demoralizing, extremely frustrating, and very hurtful and harmful to a lot of people. I think first and foremost, people are just sick of it. They're sick and tired of all of the fighting, all of the back and forth. And what they are seeing is that they're seeing one small faction of one party in one branch of Congress throwing essentially a tantrum because they couldn't get their way with Obamacare, and so they are doing anything they can, including shutting down the government and risking a default in order to try to get their way. And it's no one likes this, and they want the government to work. They want their leaders to work.
And there's some real consequences, though, to this shutdown. Some people have seen it on television with the closing of things like national parks. But let's talk about some of the concrete things that people aren't talking about.
You know, I'm glad that people pay attention to national parks because those are national treasures. But you're right, Isaiah. There are concrete effects on actual people and on people's lives. For instance, small businesses are being hurt across the country. We are talking about hotels near the national parks that are losing reservations, they're getting cancellation notices, restaurants that are losing business, flower shops even near federal buildings that have seen a decline in traffic to their stores. But I mean, not just that, it's not just the small businesses that are located near parks or near federal buildings, but we're seeing other small businesses also hurt. For instance, we saw a story about a small brewery and small vineyards in Washington State that are hurt, that they can't get their new brews and their new vintages to market because there is no one approving the labeling for any of the alcohol.
Right.
So they have these new brews, they have everything ready to go, and yet Uncle Sam is shut down, and so they can't get their goods to the marketplace.
One story that really helped bring it home for me was a story about in Antarctica, where there are researchers who are studying climate change, and they've been told that they cannot proceed with their research at a time when you have this very narrow window when they can go through the ice and take measurements and do research before the Antarctic winter sets in and the weather makes it impossible to do the research. The long-term ramifications of that, that means we have a hole in our scientific research. And that's just one small example. We've talked about cancer patients at NIH and all these things. So the scale of this, when you add all of this up, what is the scale of all of these impacts, Sadie?
It is incredible. We have economists who estimate that at the end of the day, if this goes on for 3 or 4 weeks, it would cost us about $55 billion.
$55 billion.
$55 billion that it will cost to the economy. We're talking about people who can't get, again, their goods to the marketplace, research that cannot be done, so many things halted all up and down the economic chain, and it's American people, it's you and us, and that are paying the price for this.
So how do we get past this? I mean, we're talking about there's a moving target right now in terms of what this is going to look like. It may be different by the time people actually see this video, but whatever it is probably going to be a short-term solution. We'll probably have this again in 3 or 4 months. So how do we get past this? What's the way forward?
The short-term solution that's being discussed is positive in some ways. At least there are negotiations. We're trying to reopen the government. But we have to get over the cycle of brinkmanship. We have to get over this cycle where every year there is a threat of a shutdown, or every time we have to lift the debt ceiling, there is a threat of default. This is not the way that we govern. We need to get back to jobs and the economy. We're still recovering from the Great Recession, but our leaders have to understand that they have to see the long-term impacts of their actions, that they can't be controlled by these whims of a small faction of one group in one part of our government. This is not the way to run the world economy.
Right. And we have to remember, first of all, that we are, in fact, talking about a global economy. This is not just the United States. Conservatives have a real habit of having disdain for what the world thinks when it's anything other than military power. But our image economically is taking a real hit from this.
Yes, we are. You see economic leaders from across the world calling for us to really put an end to this partisanship bickering so that we can do what's responsible and do what's right. The nation has bills, you pay the bills. You don't default on our obligations and send the entire world economy spinning. I mean, you even have China come out and say they need to de-Americanize because it's too risky for people to invest in U.S. treasuries because of all the fighting. And I mean, we've come to quite a stage when we have China saying the U.S. is too risky.
Yeah, well, maybe what we ought to do is send the conservatives, the Tea Party Republicans who are causing all of this, a $55 billion bill so that they can compensate the country for the damage that they've done.
I mean, if there's a way to do so. I think they need to end their ideological crusade. We fought over Obamacare for years and years now. There was a protracted discussion before Obamacare was passed about the law itself, how to shape it. It passed, both the House and the Senate, and then they waged a long election over it. President Obama was reelected, and it's the law of the land now. People are enrolling, and it's working, and it's helping. And it's really time to stop the fighting. If you have concerns about the law, let's work together to fix it. Let's work together to address the concerns. But let's not shut the entire government down and put the entire world on the brink of an economic meltdown. Because you've lost for 4 years in the fight.
I think it's real clear what the imperative is. If they cannot bring themselves to respect the democracy that we have, then they'll have to be taken out.
Well, let's hope voters
and replaced with people who will respect our democracy.
Yeah, let's hope voters see that, because this is, as you say, it's our democratic values at stake. It's our whole way of governing our whole society. We can't tolerate hostage taking by a small faction. We can't. This is not American behavior. Well,
thank you for all that you've been doing to keep us informed of what the shutdown is doing to the country.
Thank you for having me, Isaiah.